Good evening. Within the last hour, it has been announced that the United States has completed its military withdrawal from Afghanistan 20 years after the military engagement in the country began. The head of US Central Command, Kenneth McKenzie, told a news conference a short time ago that it was a monumental accomplishment that 130,000 people had been flown out of the country since the Taliban seized power earlier this month. The development came a short time after the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution calling on the Taliban to allow safe passage for anyone left in the country who still wants to leave. Well, in a moment, we'll be speaking live to Barbara Plett Usher, our correspondent in Washington. But first, let's join our chief international correspondent, Lyse Doucet, who is live in Kabul tonight. A significant moment, Lyse, at the end of a scramble of the last fortnight.
A scramble of the last fortnight, intensified security measures in the last few days, and in the last hour, the kind of gunfire that I'm sure all of our viewers can hear. It's why I'm wearing a helmet tonight. The skies were full of red tracer fire, machine gun fire, bullets being fired in celebration. America's longest war has finally ended here in Afghanistan, and there will be a long night of celebration by Taliban supporters who will hail not just the departure of the last American soldier from Afghanistan, the last of what they describe as a foreign occupation, but they hail it as the defeat of the mighty American empire. It is nearly 20 years since a US-led invasion toppled the Taliban. And tonight at Kabul International Airport, we saw the images of the last American soldiers face to face with the elite guards of the Taliban transferring control. It must have been an incredibly difficult moment for the Americans. President Joe Biden kept his word, but it will have been at what a cost.
Lyse Doucet in Kabul, thank you. Let's turn to Barbara Plett Usher, who's our correspondent in Washington, because we heard from the US military a few moments ago, but we are now expecting to hear from the US Secretary of State. And what is the expectation, Barbara, about how he is going to phrase and reflect on what lies ahead now?
Well, I think he's going to be looking forward quite a bit more than reflecting, although we'll see how that goes. The military press conference was very much about what is coming. They said that the Taliban had been helpful and useful for them in terms of the evacuation, but they would have their hands full when it came to Islamic State militants. And crucially, they said that they had not been able to get everybody out that they wanted to get out. So this is, I think, going to be very much the focus of Secretary Blinken's comments, that even though the military mission has ended, the diplomatic mission to evacuate those who want to get out, American citizens, but also Afghans who worked with Americans, will continue. We've heard quite a bit from him already on that, and I expect he will outline more how they will continue to press the Taliban to let people leave freely. That is something that the Taliban has promised. That is something that has been mentioned in a UN Security Council resolution, which has just been passed. The international community uniting around this demand that anyone who wants to leave should leave, be able to leave, and also putting forward a sort of set of ground rules for the coming days, the coming months and years with a new Taliban-led government in Afghanistan, and perhaps Secretary Blinken will refer to that as well.
Barbara Plett Usher in Washington, thank you very much. Let's return now to what the day has been like in Kabul, what turned out to be the last day for US troops in Afghanistan. There were rockets that were fired towards Kabul airport earlier today. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for that. And the United States has been accused of causing significant civilian casualties in a drone strike that was aimed at targeting IS in Kabul, and those civilian casualties including children. Sikandar Kermani, our correspondent, reports on that now.
Flames leaped from a car after militants from the Islamic State group used it to launch rockets at Kabul airport. They were intercepted by a missile defense system. But planes landing today fired flares to try and protect themselves from further attack. Nearby, a family combs through the wreckage of a US drone strike launched yesterday. Relatives and neighbours are collecting remains of the victims to bury. They angrily reject American claims the vehicle targeted was being used by a suicide bomber from the Islamic State group. If there was a bomb inside, the car would have been blown up, says this man. Amongst those killed, 2-year-old Limaye, 12-year-old Farzad, and these 2 twins, as well as Nasser, who had previously worked alongside American forces. The family was hoping to be evacuated out of the country.
My brother came from his work, want to park the car in here, and their children. It was in the car. On that time that happened in Okra.
And how many people from your family
10
died?
persons died in here. We lost 10 persons, including of my daughter. He was 2 years old.
What happened here appears to be an awful human tragedy. It also underlines the challenges the US is going to face in trying to target militants from afar and the terrible consequences ordinary Afghans have to pay. The US has said it's assessing and investigating reports of civilian casualties, but insists an imminent threat to the airport was disrupted.
Nobody wants to see innocent life taken. We take it very, very seriously. And when we know that we have caused innocent life to be lost in the conduct of our operations, we're transparent about it. We're investigating this. I'm not going to get ahead of it.
The evacuation effort is now complete, with US soldiers flown out ahead of Tuesday's withdrawal deadline. Many Afghans remain desperate to leave the country. At this bus stand in Kabul, many are headed for the Iranian border. Nearly all are hoping to be smuggled across. Passenger numbers have more than doubled in recent weeks. The previous government only cared about getting rich themselves, says this man. Now the Taliban are here. There are no jobs. There's no work anywhere. I need to be able to feed my kids. Everything has become more expensive. We can't live here anymore. A new era in Afghanistan is about to begin. The Taliban say they're bringing peace and ending corruption. But for those here, the deep uncertainty that has accompanied their arrival is a final push towards a new life. Kermani, BBC News, Kabul.
Well, it is now just over a fortnight since the Taliban reached Kabul and took control of almost all of Afghanistan. They've portrayed themselves as more moderate than when they ruled in the 1990s and promised an amnesty to those who worked for foreign forces or the Afghan army. But there is growing evidence of a different reality on the ground, including revenge killings. Yogita Limaye reports.
A sight that strikes fear in the hearts of millions of Afghans. The Taliban back on the streets, back in control. The group assured amnesty for everyone. The announcement was made from the office of a former government spokesman they'd killed a few weeks ago. His death was justified as a punishment for his deeds. Even since the pledge of pardon, others have been killed. Haji Mullah Achakzai was the security director of Badghis province. Multiple sources have told the BBC he was executed by the Taliban just over a week ago. As was Ghulam Sakhi Akbari, security head for Farah province. We spoke to a soldier from the Afghan Special Forces who's in hiding. He didn't want to be named.
تخطی کردم در ولایت قندهار 12 نفر چند روز پیش در ولایت جلال که دوستای ما حضور شخصی دوستایی بودن که باشان ارتباط داشتیم میشناختیم همراه ما در اسپیشال فورس بودن چون اونا کشته شدن ترور شدن با بهانه‌هایی که کشیدن از خانه‌هایشان اونا را از بین بردن.
Other soldiers have also told us about colleagues being killed. And a high-ranking police official in hiding wanted his story to be heard.
Yesterday, Taliban said to my colleagues, my assistants, and investigated him for 5 hours. Asked, where is your chief? It's problem. The Taliban, they don't have a judicial system. They don't have court. They're killing. It's a very bad situation for me. Now my children is with me. Every day I have to change my location. I'm going now village to village, buy my food, with my children, with my wife. Sorry. I don't have any money to pass the border.
War?
Many like Zarifa Ghaffari, Afghanistan's first female mayor, have fled after threats from the Taliban. She says her father was killed by the group last year, and now they're looking for her.
They beat my two guards and they took their weapons away of them and all this. And then they were searching for me. Taliban were searching for me, especially those Taliban who came from Wardak province.
Forced to leave her country, Zarifa is now in Germany.
And Taliban did this to me. I did nothing to them. I was not part of their war, man. But they destroyed my everything. And more importantly, they made me to leave the country, which was more important than my mom to me always.
Zala Zazai was a policewoman, one of thousands trained since 2001 by the international community. Out of Afghanistan now, she fears for her colleagues back home.
از همو شماره ها برشان زنگ میه از دفاتر خودشان و حتی بعضا میگن زنگ بیشتر میه، حتی نصف شب اونا گفتن که ما شما رو به خاطر کار میخوایم، یعنی شما جای سکونتتان برای ما بگوین شما کجا زندگی میکنید. این که ما فعلا میتونم حداقل صدای یک زن پلیس افغان باشم، میخوایم این موضوعات رو بگویم که خانه ها تلاشی میشه، خانم‌های پلیس را اجازه نمیدن به هیچ صورت.
Acts of reprisal continue with impunity. It could be the result of a gap in the thinking of Taliban leaders and their foot soldiers. But it's mounting evidence that their present is as ruthless as their past. Yogita, Limaye, BBC News.
Well, at the UN today, members of the Security Council called on the Taliban to make sure that those who still want to leave the country can do so. But this moment is full of uncertainty for millions of Afghans. Let's return now to Lyse Doucet in Kabul. And you've known the country, Lyse, for so many years. What is your assessment of what the era that begins tonight looks like for Afghanistan?
Well, since it is a night of history, since it is a time, yet again, where Afghans are turning the page. If I may, I will bring in a bit of history. I was reporting from Kabul in 1989 when the Soviet troops left, in 92 when the Mujahideen took power, in 2001 when a US-led invasion toppled the Taliban. Afghans have never lived through such a transition, which is so fraught with fear, which is so shrouded in darkness and uncertainty. The mantra of the United States during this withdrawal, which began months ago, was that it would be a safe, orderly and responsible withdrawal. And yet it is one which has ended not just in chaos and violence, but in pain and hurt for Afghans yet again. Afghans who had dared to hope that after the world came knocking on their door in 2001, that when they left it would be the best of days, except it is, for so many Afghans, the worst of days. The last US soldier has left, promising to come back and get those that they have left behind. And they are counted in, we can't count how many. All we see and hear are the pleading messages for help. But tomorrow morning, nearly 38 million Afghans will wake up and they will wonder, what will life be like under Taliban rule? There will be rules, there will be regulations, but will they be the kind of order that allows Afghans to think this is a country they can still call their own?
Lyse Doucet live from Kabul, thank you. And there is more coverage and more analysis of this on the BBC News website.